welcome back. Sleepy What's It here, and I have another Miniatures Monday video for you. Though this video will probably be going out on Saturday a little bit earlier than normal, because I'm going to be traveling next week and won't be able to release the video at the normal time. This also means that the following week's video will probably be a touch delayed since I won't be getting home until Monday of the following week. This video is going to be a little bit of a shorter one since we're only going to be painting one model, but hopefully it will be a fun one. This week I wanted to make a Treeman for playing Blood Bowl with, because I've been wanting to play some exhibition games as the Wood Elves, and I can use my Dark Elves as proxies and my humans as proxies, but I was still short a good model to represent my Treeman on my team. When picking a model for this, I wanted to go with a slightly smaller model than the traditional big guys models, because I've always found the problem with the big guy models, be it your ogres, your trolls, any of your big guys, is that when they get knocked over, which inevitably they will because they're a big target on the field, because they're so tall, they don't lay out nicely in a square. They fill in multiple squares, so you end up having to work around them, or have a token to indicate where they fell down on the ground. So when picking a model, I decided to choose something that was more of a 28mm figure, as opposed to a very tall, large Treeman. So this is why we are a compact Treeman model here. I specifically chose Saproling Warrior from Reaper. This is 77495, which is the PVC rubbery version of it. There is also a metal version if you really want to go fancy doing a build like this. I happen to have a couple of these. I think I got them in a bundle somewhere, so I decided to use one of these. Though I'm specifically putting together this model for playing Blood Bowl, because of the scale that we're working on, this kind of Treeman Saproling Warrior character would be quite usable for your variety of fantasy-based miniatures. So for D&D or Pathfinder, something like that. If you need something that isn't like a huge hulking Treebeard style Treeman, this is going to be a much more, I guess, approachable scale. As you can see here, in comparison to a standard Dark Elf model, now that it's finished, you can see they're about the same size. So this is a 28mm model. It fits in quite nicely with the rest, and it fits on the standard style base quite well, so it works really nicely. So let's get into making this guy. So for actually prepping this model for painting, the first step was to remove all the flash from him, which there was a little bit, because this is a bones model, they sometimes are a little bit, have a few mold lines and stuff, but it was relatively easy to clean up. It's actually really nice how they ran a lot of them to be along some of the more branchy bits, so they really stand out and can be trimmed off really easily. For attaching to his base, I decided to leave the integral base on and just glue him to a standard 32mm base and use some excess green stuff that I had out from doing the previous video, actually, to build up around the base to make it look like he's standing on a little bit of a hill. If I hadn't had that extra green stuff that I was looking for a use for, I probably would have disconnected from his integral base and pinned him directly to the plastic base, because that wouldn't have built him up as much, but I think overall it still worked out nicely. After letting the green stuff cure overnight, I went and primed the model using my airbrush. I did a relatively standard zenithal prime here, though instead of starting out with a pure black as the base coat of the prime, I actually used German Panzer Gray from Vallejo, which is a dark gray that I think works a little bit better, especially for a model like this that I'm going to end up being a little bit brighter. Then shot in at about 45 degrees, standard Vallejo gray primer, and finished it off with a little bit of white primer from on top. After letting the primer cure, we went on to actually painting the wood on our Treeman. This paint job actually turned out really well, I think, and it was actually really easy to do. So for the base layer, what I actually did is I used wood stain brown from Reaper, but I mixed it with a little bit of airbrush flow aid and a bit of glaze medium to get a nice thin glaze out of it, and ran that over all the wooded areas. So you can see how this came out here is that because of the zenithal highlighting that we laid down with the primer, this gives us a lot of our shadows and highlights right off the bat. Because it was a little bit thin, it fell a little bit more than I would have necessarily wanted, so you can see where the white and basically the high points are almost pure white on the initial pass. So that's why we're going to be doing our next two steps. So after this, I dry brushed it using Shield Brown to darken some of the highlights, and then I did a final layer of dry brushing / highlighting using Driftwood Brown. I didn't apply any shades to this. This was actually as simple as you may think it is. Like, it was 3 coats of paint. 2 of them were dry brush layers. The first layer was just lay it all down. So I was really happy with how quickly this turned out. After getting all the wood color down, I went in with a little bit of Scorpy Green from Vallejo, and you can see it a little bit. It doesn't show up so well in the pictures, but I basically highlighted where the eyes are on the model so that you get a sense of where the face is a little bit better, going with kind of a bright green to give it kind of a life wood magic vibe. The model doesn't have a lot of like open gaps where you could work a lot more of that in to do more of an OSL effect. So, and then because as I said, I'm just doing this for predominantly using as a prox. I didn't want to spend like hours picking out little tiny like green areas. So we did the eyes. I think it looks good. For filling in the base at this point, the first thing I did was layer of Sterling Mud, which is a texture paint from Citadel. This is kind of my go-to for doing generic muddy, dirty terrain. It's maybe a little bit redder or more orangey brown than I necessarily like most of the time, but it works as a good starting point. Then I applied a wash of Agrax Earthshade from Citadel. This darkened it, got the shadows really established, and I liked how it looked. Then I went in and dry brushed it with a couple layers of brown to establish more of the earth tones to it. So the first color was Muddy Brown from Reaper, which was then followed by Earth Brown from Reaper, which are not as red, but still slightly non-gray browns. So this established the overall look of the dirt. On top of this, I then dry brushed using Mossy Green and Turf Green from Reaper to establish the more grass, mossy, forest ground cover textures. I haven't at this point decided whether or not I'm going to put flocking or grass or anything on this model. I think it looks reasonable the way it is right now, but I might, depending on how I feel about it once I've sealed it and everything, I may go in and do that. So other than playing down some black paint to rim out the base, that is it. So this was actually a very quick paint job. I'm very happy with how it turned out. And there's not really much more to say other than that. The Saproling Warrior is a nice model from Reaper. It's got a lot of texture, so it really takes nicely to the techniques I used here of just kind of glazing it and dry brushing it. Like, it's very easy to pick out a lot of those details, and it looks nice relatively quickly. As I said, the biggest thing I probably would change is cutting it off its integral base and done something slightly different for the basing, but overall I'm happy with how it turned out. So if you need one of these for playing Blood Bowl, or two if you're playing Halflings, really easy, cheap way to get them. You don't have to go buy 3rd edition Treeman from eBay and pay ridiculous prices and carry a ton of metal around. You can get for like $5-6, I think, from Reaper. You can buy 2 of these models and they'll work really nicely for you. And if you're playing D&D or Pathfinder, if you're DMing, you want to have a forced encounter where your party's pissed off some forest spirits, you can easily get a bunch of these guys together, and as I said, put them together relatively easily because their paint job isn't super complex. So I hope you found that informative. If you enjoyed the video, please give the video a like. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe to the channel. I put out miniatures videos weekly, sometimes on Mondays. If you know someone that's looking at playing Wood Elves or Halflings in Blood Bowl, or a DM that needs a whole bunch of forest spirits, please share this video with them to give them some ideas. If you have your own ideas for homebrewing treants or treemen or ents or whatever you want to call them, please leave a comment down below. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.